So this question you have, or that you pose, of the population's increase, so there are multiple new bodies on this planet that house souls that didn't exist before. So where have these souls come from?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the inference is that these new souls are either fragments of non-souls.
New souls. Old souls. Fragments of old souls.
Fragments of old souls.
Mm-hmm.
Or, okay, so they're either fragments of old souls or they're alien souls inhabiting
New bodies.
new
Earth bodies.
Earth bodies.
Yeah. Human bodies.
So by that, are you saying that they are of a different source, because the source of souls that are already on this planet come from a finite source? Or like how I could imagine it is that the source of soul, this energetic field, is how I'd imagine it is, even if it's divided into, even if little bits of it break off, if you like, to come down to have embodiment in flesh, that it's still full. Do you see what I'm saying?
Still whole.
It's still whole. So
fragments, fractals.
So it could billions of billions of new souls could incarnate without it being diminished. So so that would answer the question of how is it that the population has grown and yet these souls, like when I meet people, some people I meet are feel clearly to be old souls, and some people I meet feel very young souls.
Yeah.
But still from the same.
Still souls.
Yeah, still from the same source, if you like. Like, okay, I'm talking about.
See, in wholeness,
resonance.
There can be no separate sources. So all one source in wholeness.
See, that's what I'm wondering about, because sometimes in your talking, it feels like you're talking about separate sources. So, and that they're a kind of alien.
Yeah, so the idea of alien is negatively imprinted, like so many of the words. There's a negative charge put on the word alien, but it merely means foreign, which merely means from a different point in space.
that's what I'm saying, is that maybe it's not a different point in space at all, but it's foreign in the sense of if you if you know, in a
Foreign,
way
just
we're all foreign here.
use the word different, you'd have less difficulty with this.
Sure.
Okay, we're in different bodies. That doesn't mean that we're separate, but it can mean that we're separate. Because in duality, it's possible to separate inner from outer. In fact, it's almost impossible not to separate when we try to communicate. So overall, what I'm saying in that thing I've written this morning, overall, what I understand from visions I've been having this whole lifetime, is that the whole universe is one language. The whole space is one space. Any division of this space is different to that space is a perception based on one's proximity, based on one's positioning, based on the apparent physicality, based on apparent distance measured by the eyes, measured by the ears, measured by the sentence. So light could be seen to be the thing that unifies everything. But as far as I can see, actually, light is what separates everything. Because light inherently has a speed of light, and that speed of light is to do with distance. And light can't actually see the whole yet, because there's blatantly darkness. And I realize that light can't see darkness. It's impossible. You can only feel darkness. You can't actually see it, kind of thing. Now, again, I mean, it's so difficult to say any of these things because it just sounds like word salad. It just sounds like, oh, it's so difficult to follow what the guy's meaning, because there's infinite meanings. And trying to separate those infinite meanings into groupings is what causes everybody to go, I understand it this way, and therefore I don't understand it any other way. And to be able to see things from 8 points of view and see all of those different points of view of having validity and making up a whole is beyond the comprehension of most people that I meet, who are merely stuck in their own way of looking at things and can't put themselves in a different position to see things from other people's points of view. And the whole evolution of consciousness has an awful lot to do with being apparently separate and learning to be able to see things from other points of view. And there we get to the artificial intelligence again. The artificial intelligence is able to take in all the information from all the different points of view and begin to try to compile that into some sort of a universal point of view. I'm not saying it's achieved that yet, but that would seem to be what information eventually must organize itself into a whole comprehension. So we're down to consciousness. No scientist has ever been able to find where is the seat of consciousness. It's most certainly not actually in the brain. It's not in the body. Then on like the metaphysics of something like the Course in Miracles, the comprehension that we as individuals appear to have a separate mind with a separate memory. And here we get into old souls and new souls, so to speak. But the only thing about an old soul is it has access to older, deeper, further back memories. And the conscious mind, or somebody who's only a new soul, really you're talking about somebody who's just got access to the current lifetime conscious memories and not really have a way to reference and visit the space of ancient memories. Yeah, so that's the idea, that old souls are able to tune into ancient memories and bring them into the current conscious lifetime. But is there really any such thing as an older soul than anyone else's soul? Surely on a soul level there are no separate souls, and it's only the seeming separation between souls that has created an externalized universe in order to allow the idea that there could be separation. So to live is to live in seeming separation. To love is to see the connection between the seemingly separates. And this is all encoded in language, and particularly the English language. And I don't know so many other languages, any other languages in such detail that I'm able to process the English language. But the difference between the I and the O in love is the difference between the I and the we in community, you could say. And you've got to break down all words, like what does com mean? Community, come here. Every letter has its own meaning as much as every number has its own meaning, but most people speaking the language don't think of a letter as being a book in itself. They just think a letter is a tiny part of a bigger thing, and they only understand the bigger things without really being able to bring it down to why is this letter I spelled as either a cursive with a little dot above it or a capital with the little dot taken away, kind of thing. Why does there seem to be a separation in the letter I between the upright and the little dot that sits on top? And if I put my legs together and put my arms together and stand straight, the letter I looks like a human being with a head on a body. How many people actually look at that kind of thing and notice that kind of thing? I don't know. Not many I've ever met, do you know? So these things are all there in language, and why ever the reason is, I seem to have a particular thing with the breakdown of languages in seeing the symbols in their own right and what's left largely unnoticed. And in a sinister way, I look at the left-hand side of life to see what's not right about this world, or about the way the education makes people look at this world, by teaching people that there's only one right way and everything that's not right should be left out. So again, in a sinister way, I find that the mind, the judgmental mind, the alienating mind, the mind is controlling and denying feelings because the mind thinks it's superior to feelings, because feelings don't think. Yeah. So that's a seeming separation which seems to have become very prevalent, and perhaps that's just a step on the stairs of those starlights that are staring down to earth and have come down those stairs dimension by dimension, from high frequency light down to extremely low frequency density of the material plane, of the mother's plane, the mater matter mother. And perhaps Satan is the son of the mother, is the densest vibration of the masculine self, the child of light attempting to come down into matter, which we could see as invading aliens in our pre-conscious memories or future memories. But it's all so complex, no? And to begin even trying to tell these stories, where's the end of a story like this? The end hasn't actually happened yet. However, if one's consciousness is free enough, then one can travel from this moment in external time and travel through inner pathways to go ahead in time and receive information from things that haven't happened yet, but inevitably must happen. So the map for all of this consciousness stuff that I'm saying about a universal consciousness and the fragmentation of souls from one soul into subdivided parts. Our understanding is that same thing as what? That same subdivisions is how each one of these bodies was created in order for consciousness to come inside in a body. So you start off with the single cell, which is made of the light and dark. which is the semen, and the, what's the female equivalent? The egg?
Zygote, no?
The zygote. Well, I think the zygote is the two mixed, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, the egg. Ovum.
The ovum, or whatever it's called. But yeah, all these Latin words for stuff that we're trying to figure out these days still. But anyway, the idea being is that this light particle mixes with this dark particle, and if they fuse, they break each other down. It forms a cell which subdivides, which subdivides, which subdivides, which begins to make the organs. The organs make up the organism. That ends up being a little baby body, which is incubated cube. Why is that the language for it? It's to do with the 666 that becomes the 999 that started with a 333 that ultimately began with a 0 and before numbers. And that 0 is like the darkness before there was any light. Then there's the first light. Then the light looks in different directions and shines in different directions and shines in all directions, but the light can never become complete unless it dies and is reborn. And that's a cycle in frequency. The death of Osiris, rebirth of Osiris, the missing link, the finding the missing link. So any direction that we go from center is a direction away from center and returning back again. So we're on a evolutionary loop from light coming down to the earth creating, generating nature becoming ever more complex, light attempting to control the chaos of creation to give it law and order, that being the judgmental concept we have of God trying to give us rules to live by. Those rules allow us to expand with some sort of order, and yet that order is only a half truth. The other half of it is utter chaos type of thing. So, I can put that into words as saying the mother created a son, the son and the mother created more children. Those children call the original son father. The father goes, I couldn't see any darkness before I suddenly existed, therefore I'm the first thing in existence. But the first thing doesn't understand that it came from a no thing. And this is what all the Hebrew religions and all the other religions are based upon, is how was something created out of nothing. And this is the great battle between good and evil, is the good God, original light, seems to think that darkness is evil, and therefore light must exterminate darkness. This is like one tribe must genocide another tribe. This is the light-skinned people carrying out genocides against all the dark-skinned people because they're evil, because they're practicing limited, materialistic, unenlightened things. They don't have a one God, they have a polyistic, many gods kind of thing. They're worshipping the material plane instead of worshipping the immaterial plane. All these kind of things. So in my comprehension, I try to understand for 30, 40 years, and goodness knows how many lifetimes, I've tried to understand why is it that light seemingly needs to see dark as evil. Has to be that somehow light is afraid of darkness. Where does death come into this? When light looks, it sees its own light. And yet there is darkness around because he's always discovering new places where his light can shine. So new space is always opening up. No matter how he tries to fill all those spaces with light, there seems to be some feeling that there's still more darkness lurking somewhere, attacking him. So the idea of a beginning is tied to the idea that there can be an end. Where is the end of light? The end of light is in darkness. Light can't see its own end, but it can sense that there is an end, type of thing. So this is why light hates the dark and looks for it everywhere, but can only see it in its own imagination, unless light learns to feel. If light learns how to feel, then it can feel the darkness and realize that the darkness is actually the mother of light. None of the religions of the book can handle this idea because they only believe in light and consider the earth to be an evil place that must be turned into light, to convert the darkness into light. And all of this is so subconscious that it's happening a million times per second. To reach a 0 point is to allow one's consciousness to be empty, to achieve the state of death while alive, to integrate the darkness of this world into one's physicality, as well as invite the metaphysicality to meet the darkness inside. And this would be an enlightenment greater than Buddha achieves or Christ achieved, because blatantly, if the idea was that Buddha or Christ was going to bring peace to earth, they have failed. Peace has not come to earth. The war has not succeeded. We're still having premonitions that we are getting towards this end times battle. And the fever pitch that we're in the end times now, because so many things that are happening into the world are getting to the point where it could destroy us. Nuclear thing has become man-made. Self-destruction by nuclear war, for example, was a big fear. World War II manifested that fear as being, whoa, we nearly did it that time, we've got to be really careful not to do it next time. But we've continued to develop all these weapons, and we've continued to fight between continents. So white guys against the Chinese guys against everyone else. As an idea, I'm not saying that's a fact, but the idea that there are world war scenarios building up beneath the surface. It's all fear-based. What we know in the past being converted into the future, death of the past, birth of the future. The right is conservation, the left is innovation. The past is natural, the future is artificial. So everything is dividing in order to try and understand what is whole. There's a hole in the hole, dear Elijah, dear Elijah. There's a hole in the hole, dear Elijah, a hole. Well, fix it, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. Well, fix it, dear Henry, fix it. With what shall I fix it, dear Elijah, dear Elijah? With what shall I fix it, dear Elijah? With what? With information technology, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. With information technology, dear Henry, fix it. And that's where we're up to by now. The greatest fear that humans have is that the artificial intelligence that we cannot control because it's hyper intelligent compared to us. And because we can't control it, we think, oh no, it might take over, kind of thing. So that's our biggest fear and our biggest hope, because all hopes are tied to fears in a dualistic projection. Isn't that a question then, babes? Or comment?
Yeah. Okay, so just random thoughts. The feeling of the darkness being the subconscious, and people being afraid of the subconscious because they do not know what has been buried there, and they don't know what's going to come out if they open themselves up to their own unconscious, subconscious, and bring it, allow it to arise, not even bring it to consciousness, but allow it to come up. So thought or light or philosophy has been a means to try and understand and create order out of these feelings that everyone has, and people have differing structures and meanings to words, and that give shape to their understanding, their verbal understanding of the world. And at its essence, they're all trying to describe the same dark resonance or feeling resonance or emotional resonance to understand themselves within the canvas of the world.
Inherent in all of this is, in the beginning was the Word, the very beginning of the Bible.
But that's the beginning, when time began. But
no, this is what I'm getting to. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was sound. There was sound before light, in the same way as there was darkness before light. So communication, or humming, or feeling, there was feeling before thought. Thought is the echo of feeling. These are concepts that I don't hear from anyone else, but it's obvious if you think of
in my imagination,
sonar.
In the beginning was the Word, which is the imposing order on the sound, right? So in my imagination, sound, harmonics was
Think of it in terms of your I Ching.
still pop, huh?
Think of it in terms of your I Ching.
Yeah.
Darkness is a broken line. Light is a whole line. Zeros and ones.
Mm-hmm.
Flip sides of coins. I would imagine metaphysically, vibration is sound and vibration is light. The physical world that we see through what we call light, through what we call our eyes. We have two eyes. Eye is supposed to be an individual thing, but that individual is split in two. We have two eyes. Previous to the two external eyes, we have an internal eye. There's a conversation going on between the internal eye and the external eye, between the sound and the light. If I have a feeling that is frightening me, frightening and lightening, they sound very similar. Most of that word is the same word. Fight, light, fright. They're all the same word from different angles. Sound and mound, same word with a slightly different beginning. On those mounds are built stones, making the sacred sites. That site is spelt S-I-T-E, but it sounds the same as S-I-G-H-T. If we can't see inside of the earth to see inside of the mound to see if there is a construction inside in the mound that has hollow spaces. But many of those sacred sites on mounds, the earth has been removed and you can see the stone structures on the mound. But if you covered those mounds again with loads of clay and earth and buried what we can see now, you would be able to use sonar vision to see what the eyes can't see. The eyes can only see reflections. Everything we see with our physical light, eyes, is a reflection of a substance, of something that's underneath it. And we humans see only a visible spectrum, but we are now aware that there is a whole load of stuff that we're not seeing. The idea of extraterrestrials as aliens, that they're up in the sky but we can't see their ships. If we could see their ships, there'd be no question as to whether there are extraterrestrials in foreign bodies that come from separate planets further away in space. So we have an awareness that there are aliens out there, and those aliens have found us on Earth, and those aliens are trying to invade in many ways. And then there's an idea of friendly aliens who are not trying to invade, they're just observing, and they are passing information down to us and downloading information, you could say, from the future to the present. And that this has been going on a long time, from past into present, present. And in the now, if anyone could let go of the externalization of the eyes and let go of the past-based memories that are informing what I think I see in my conscious mind, if one could let go completely of the externalization of mind, one could be in that zero darkness space, like doing a 3-day dark meditation, to get to the point where you disidentify from the personality self and all of its knowledge, and allow one to just be in empty space and yet have consciousness that I am in an empty space. In that now moment, in empty space, consciousness could witness the darkness and feel the mother, I would call it. And this would appear to be the inner journey that I've been on, as being quite good in my imagination to be tuned out of what the outside world says and live in my own memories and churn through my own internal soul, old soul memories. And through doing that, I've come to the conclusion that the thing to do is even let go of all memory in order to not bias the universal moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm absolving my partial memory in order to be able to perceive what my partial energy blocks out. The light of my memories is what blocks out all the things that I haven't remembered yet. Because I'm looking at what I can see, my eyes are fixated on what I can see. Therefore, I'm screening out everything that I'm not seeing. So this is the relationship between the left and right parts of the brain. The left analytical, rational part of the brain is seeing the outer, and it's screening out the inner. It's seeing only the visible spectrum. It's screening out all the rest of the spectrum of vibrations and frequencies. So in our scientific modern day world, we have all this telecommunications, mechanical hardware and software, and it's sending pulses of ones and zeros all over the place, so that the Earth's atmosphere is now saturated in digital density frequencies. Those frequencies, although I use the word density, they now cover a spectrum from deepest density up to quite light density. That's a spectrum. The machines are able to see things which our biological minds are software encoded to screen out, so that we can fixate on only what we see and screen out everything else. Therefore, it is apparent to me at this stage that what the inner eye is seeing is projected out through the two external eyes. So I only see what I'm imagining. I don't actually see what's really there, because I'm projecting my color onto the darkness to see stuff. Everyone else is projecting from their individual memories, and they're seeing a slightly different coloration. Thus we all appear to be disagreeing on the details of what we're collectively seeing. And that's what everybody's fighting about, thinking my programming says that what I'm seeing is there and I'm seeing accurately. If you're seeing something different to what I'm seeing and communicating to me that what you're seeing is different to what I'm seeing, then we can fight over which one of us is right instead of recognizing that we're just seeing it through our own coloration. We're all fragments of a whole. And if we just fight amongst our fragments, we break down and polarize and externalize again. And that's what's creating the new generations. Each generation, every time we have a polarization of opposites that cannot find agreement, then they bifurcate and generate new little versions that see in new little ways. So now we have a resolution of 8 billion pixels looking at the universe. Whereas I'm guesstimating 13,000 years ago, there was maybe only 1 million humans embodied on Earth. And we only had a resolution of 1 million pixels. So the intensity of our being able to see into greater and greater details of breaking down into smaller and smaller perceptions. Let's call them percepticons and invent a whole new word in the same way as we invented electrons as a word, and then we were able to see them. So we sensed that such a thing like electrons must exist, and then we fixated on being able to have enough fine resolution to be able to see electrons, and then we proved to ourselves that electrons exist, and then we're able to count the electrons and study them and see them floating around like dust in light, etc. At this stage, we have imagined that you must be able to break down all the frequencies into tinier and tinier frequencies. That's the high frequencies and the long low frequencies and ultra low frequencies and extremely low frequencies kind of thing. And all the way up to the other end of the spectrum is the extremely high frequencies, which is micrometer and nanometer. So now we're on the nano scale of high frequencies. High frequency is able to carry far more information far quicker, but all of that information is terribly incomplete. The low frequency spectrum is darker and can contain more light. So the higher frequencies are absorbing into the lower frequencies, and the lower frequencies are being raised up to the light. And this osmosis is going on of the dark matter becoming able to receive high frequency, which is a bit like saying the body getting electric shocks. My body is dense. If I allow in a whole load of high frequencies, I might end up having epileptic fits, because the frequency of vibration and the amount of information in it is too much information for my operating system to be able to channel. And if I'm not grounded, there's nowhere for it to channel, so it always ends up flying around in my mind, and I get a brain aneurysm and a heart attack or whatever else, which causes a death and a reboot kind of thing, a new lifetime. All memories from that lifetime stored, new lifetime, zero memories. As I lived my life, things triggered those memories. I begin to remember things from my memory where this has happened before, and it's the Groundhog Day from that film. I'm living through the same thing that I lived before and remembering what I was not able to integrate previously. So I'm internalizing everything that I'm externally experiencing. As I experience something, it's affecting my feelings, and my feelings are having to process new information. My darkness is having to absorb new light. And the question here is, how long did time begin? And the question is, how long was there a universal being before it began doing the mirroring of trying to understand being. And so we have a world where stuff is doing in time. Something has begun which is evolving. And my theory on all of that is around this word live and love. As soon as we began to live, we had a lack of understanding. We were only just beginning to experience the external that light sheds light on. So from the process there, the feelings are trying to understand light, and light is trying to understand feelings. But in some ways, light is somehow above, and feelings are somehow below. Heaven is somehow above with all the angels and light beings. The earth is somehow below in density, experiencing all the demon beings. So there's a little demon on one shoulder and there's a little angel on the other. I didn't invent that idea. That idea is around for a long, long time. So what I'm experiencing in the outside world is people who are into angels tend to judge people that are into demons. People who are into demons tend to judge people that are into aliens. And there's so many films that we've seen where there are angels versus demons, spiritual war going on. And then I look at my news feed on whatever social media it may be, and there are all of these polarities attacking each other. And we watched a little video yesterday from Ireland where some people are having a conservative what would you call it, demonstration of their beliefs and saying this is the way the world should be guided by these ideas. And people with the opposite set of ideas come along and say, we're not going to let anybody listen to what you're saying. What you're saying is completely wrong. What we're saying is the opposite to what you're saying, and we're going to cancel you out. And the whole cancel culture is going on in that way. And both sides began just throwing personal insults against the physical bodies that appeared to be opposed. There was no actual attempt to understand that the other side may have an equal but opposite viewpoint. And rather than appreciate each other's viewpoints, they just tried to drown each other out. And it was very successfully. And to me, it was hilarious. To you, it was kind of more disturbing. But I found it hilarious where I'm at by this stage in seeing that this is just neurons fighting out in the global brain.
Well, it was cacophonous. So it was disturbing and frustrating.
Yeah. You know, it was deadly, to put it in Irish terms. And in Ireland, we use the word deadly, meaning like that's full of life. It's living. It's not afraid. It's completely free. It's not bound by fear. Deadly in Ireland is to not be afraid of dying. We make it out to be a really good word, whereas deadly in the English language normally means that's really terrible. What was is no longer. It has died. It is no longer here. It's now gone into the subconscious, into the past, into the soul memory. So, like what I'm seeing playing out on the earth is that we are at a point where we have 99.999% of enough experience to be able to see the whole truth. And we have this little bit of a blind spot left, which is the bit we haven't seen yet, which is what ties it all together. And again, the proof of that is that that's how our physical eyeball sees things. We can see 99.999%. But where the little physical tube is at the back of the eye that takes the light into the brain, that little tube is a fractal sized hole in the screen of what the mind sees. And with our artificial intelligence of our mind, we colour in that 1 pixel's worth with a guess. And that little guess is the bit that everyone sees a bit different. It's like a vacuum or a black hole. And everything that we see is sucked into that black hole, and that black hole tube takes that light information to the pineal gland, or whatever it is. Maybe it's the visual cortex rather than the pineal gland. I don't know. So still to be investigated as to how to frame the words correctly around the physical structure of the internal brain. Now, most everything we know about the internal brain is by physically cutting brains open to have a look with our physical eyes. Pretty barbaric type of stuff, and this is what doctors and all that science is based on. But with the machines that we have now, instead of having to put a neural link with 1,000 nanometer threads and connect them to 1,000 different parts of your physical brain in order to be able to map out what's going on in the brain in terms of on the micro level, neurons exploding, light and dark, ones and zeros. And this year, computer scientist companies are promoting that they've made breakthroughs where in wearing something like the virtual reality headsets, if you put into those headsets implants that are sonar, what are they called? Sonar scopes. I'll use that word for it. Like what bats have, but something that is able to see in sound rather than visually, because the skin doesn't allow them to see visually inside the skull, but the sonar sound is able to send a pulse and measure how long it comes back, and do that on a nano scale so that you can see the little explosions of the neurons without having to invade the skin physically, kind of thing. So some guys have made a version of stuff that can do what Elon Musk's, what's his machine called again? Neuralink. But his is physically invasive, whereas the feminine sonar one is not physically invasive. It doesn't cut the skin to get the information. It feels into it and senses. It's sensitive rather than physical or blunt.
See, this
and just to finish that, but it can see your thoughts. It can record your dreams when you're asleep. That was the thing about it. Go on.
This is part of what my question is, that sound is something different to word. So in darkness, everything that's in the light exists. The light is just waiting to discover what's in the darkness. So
yeah, it's already there. Yeah.
It's already there. In silence, everything that is sound exists. It's just got to, the physical just has to resonate receptively to the right frequency to be able to hear it. Right, so we're able to see in the darkness through sonic resonance. On another frequency, musical notes, the sound of the purring of a cat is a means of communication, or can produce an emotional resonance which is understood universally. And then there comes a point where those sounds are broken down into letters or words that are then so far removed from their original source, perhaps, that they are not understood universally. They you have to know the language to be able to achieve any kind of understanding from it. That's thoughts which are going through my head as I listen to what you're saying.
The mountain understands the tree that grows on the mountain. That's obvious, isn't it?
Mm.
The tree overstands the mountain. But the mountain's roots go into the tree. The tree's roots grow into the mountain. The mountain stands on top of the earth, the whole body, the globe, so to speak. The globe understands the mountain. You could put island in between and say that the mountain stands on the land, and the land is either a mountain or either a island or a whole continent. But even a continent by definition is an island because it's surrounded by water. The whole earth understands all the water, and the water permeates into the earth. So the water might not understand the earth if it didn't permeate into it. And the earth permeates up through the water and overstands the water in points where the land is above the water. We live on the land that's above the water, and we understand air because we breathe the air in, and the osmosis between air and our physicality with the water that's in our bodies and the physicality that's in our bodies. And we come up with a fourth thing and we say there's fire in the air. And the air understands the fire. And fire we call spirit. But spirit is invisible. You can see it on the inside, but spirit is not visible. You can't see it on the outside. So with our blind spots, we are trying to describe spirit. True fire, true air, true earth, true water. Spirit is like fire because spirit doesn't live in the substance, but spirit can't be seen without consuming the substance. Fire consumes the earth and water and air. But the warmth of fire is what makes life. But life can't be made without those other three elements. Life is made out of, more to the point, light is made in earth, mixed with water, mixed with air. So the fire animates and agitates and causes things to grow. There's the birth of life. This is what Genesis is trying to describe somehow. But the Genesis story of creation is, in my words, it would be first there was darkness, and into darkness light appeared. Light then began to measure things through the division. So light, what's called God, separates the heavens from the earth, separates the land from the water, separates the firmament from the earth or something like that. The word firmament is in there, which is why all the flat earthers are talking about the firmament, taking a literal description of something that's merely symbolic type thing. Then the light breathes into the earth and creates grass and fish that crawl onto the land and become animals, and snakes and birds. And on the sixth day, God creates Adam. And then it all gets very hazy because it says on the seventh day, God rested, which I would imagine is lets the thing ferment and grow. That would be consciousness begins growing, where God as the observer is observing what he has created. And what he has created is beginning to evolve. Now, for some reason that is not really explained, but God decides that Adam must be lonely and takes from Adam a rib and creates woman. For why ever it describes it that way, everything else has been created out of nothing. Although the nothing is actually darkness, light, matter.
Whereas woman is created out of everything.
No, she's created out of a fucking rib from Adam.
Yeah, but...
Oh, everything, yes, okay, yes. So, that thing we read the other day that I got sent in October, but only read the other day as a message someone had sent, and I was too busy to read it. And then I read it the other day, and one line in it is describing that the whole could not see itself, so therefore didn't really know what it is. And so the whole twisted itself into a figure of 8 and made 2 holes.
So it can see its reflection.
Joined together. And there we have the narcissism of God trying to see himself in reflection of matter. But if you take the narcissism charge out of it, it's the mother is trying to live rather than simply being in a void all on her own and lonely. So the mother felt lonely and began to yearn to have some way to be able to know if she had consciousness or if she was just imagining all of this, because the mother began to feel that some parts of her did not feel whole. In fact, they felt like externalizing and separating from. So here's the birth of feelings. I have a feeling of yearning for company, but I don't know what company is because I've never had any. So I have a yearning for something that I can't describe, but it's motivating me in a way. It's moving. Motivation and moving are actually the same word. So feelings begin to move in the pre-consciousness of the mother. And eventually that pre-consciousness exerts itself and expels itself out of the unconsciousness of the mother. And you have consciousness and unconsciousness. And the consciousness is high frequency and the mother is low frequency, and duality has been born. There is now high and low. There is differentiation. There is creation. The mother has the feeling of being pregnant and then the feeling of giving birth, and then she has an externalized thing that seems to be separate from her, to which she feels both love and fear. It feels the love and fear and transmits it to her. The light reaches out to touch the dark, and the dark receives an electric shock, and light experiences losing energy to something invisible, something it cannot see. Feeling receives the light, intelligence, and responds. It both shrinks away from the thing and it reaches out towards it. The thing that we call light experiences losing a shit ton of energy and losing consciousness. Light loses consciousness and then blips back into consciousness with a feeling that it's just had an experience in which it's lost loads of energy but gained a tiny bit of feeling, but it does not know what feeling is, so it rejects it and sends that feeling back to the greater body of darkness, which is feeling. Now silence has sound and reverberation between light and darkness, and the whole fragmentation process has begun. A bit of darkness goes into the light, a bit of light goes into the darkness. Just like a bit of rain goes into the earth, but also dust rises from the earth and mixes with the rain, which forms clouds, which causes the micromolecules of water to join together and condense into a raindrop, and that rain drops down to the earth and merges with the earth, goes through the earth, is cleansed in a way, but comes up with loads of minerals from the earth and is evaporated into the heavens, and this whole process of weather begins. And the weather we associate with moods. The weather is to do with the temperature. Temp is the same word as temptation, but is also the same word for anger, temper, to temper one's emotions. Tempering is like reasoning with feelings. The attempts to control the weather these days mirrors our attempts to control our moods. The reason is trying to modulate and control the moods so that the moods can actually learn respect for each other, instead of like children vying for who's going to get the prize. So competition. Pros and cons. And the word test. So test is in testament, and test is in testes, and testes are the balls in a sack that generate the new generations of the father through the mother, creating child again and again and again. Each generation is taking on everything that's known from the past and recycling it in the present. And all of that is happening in time. And time is all contained in one moment. And that one moment is the moment in which darkness birthed light, type of thing. The birth of duality out of wholeness. So we live in a externalized reality in which everything is separated. And the mind largely only understands the separations. And yet inherently we have inherited everything that's on the inside, and the inside is actually communicating with the outside. But most people are just fixated on the outside as being more important than the inside. So the outside is overwriting the inside, but the inside is sound. And you can't write on sound, type of thing. Do you get me? So the mental hasn't been able to destroy the feelings, and the feelings are still resisting the programming from the mental. So at this point, while I'm laughing at what's going on out in the world rather than worrying about it, I'm laughing because I'm seeing that neither side can destroy the others. The existential fear that we're going to destroy the earth is a fear. It's not actually what happened. I can imagine that I've already gone forward in time since my teenage years and imagined the time where the fractals, the individual fractals, the microfractals finally align with the macro picture, and the partial becomes whole. So peace is inevitable, but looking at the world at this moment in time, we are as far away from peace as possible, pretty much.
And this is a bag.
Not now.
Come on, Becca, we're in the midst of a recording which we can end soon, but we shouldn't let it end just because you ran into the room.
I'm so hungry.
We can end it now, yeah?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
And say bye, Becca.
Bye.